How's it going, everyone? This is Camden McDonald, and about a year ago, I decided that I wanted to take a look into my family tree, and this is for an upcoming video. And immediately after starting my journey, I almost immediately came across a name, and this name was Brig Gen William Edmondson Grumble Jones. This guy came from a second wife, while my line, the one that I wanted to focus on, came from the first wife. So I just brushed him under the carpet and focused on the first wife leading down to me. But then I decided to revisit him, and it's a good thing I did too, because immediately afterwards I looked at his first part of his name and it said Brig Gen. Now, as a historian, I realized what those first words meant. Brig is short for brigadier, and Gen is short for general. That can only mean one thing. This man was Brigadier General William Edmondson Grumble Jones. And as soon as I realized this, I decided to search him up. And as soon as I did, I fell down a massive rabbit hole and realized something. My great-great-great-great half-uncle was a Confederate general. I know, shocking, right? So then, as soon as I found that out, I decided I should make a video about him. So that's what we're going to be doing today. William Edmondson Jones was born on May 9, 1824 in Washington County, Virginia, under the parents Catherine Moffett Edmondson and Robert Jones. When he grew up, Jones went on to attend the Emory and Henry College, from which he graduated in 1844. Then, he went on to the U.S. Army Academy, and then he graduated from that in 1848, ranking 12th out of the 48 candidates. Then, he was given his own cavalry, sent off to Washington State, where he fought Indians and other tribesmen. Then in 1852, he returned home, where he then married a woman named Eliza M. Dunn. But unfortunately, immediately after their marriage, tragedy struck. Immediately after their marriage, Jones was given a scouting job somewhere in Texas, so he and his wife boarded the steamer SS Independence, its final destination, Pascavallo, Texas. However, on March 26, while the ship was attempting to enter Pascavallo, the ship grounded on a sandbar in rough waves and got stuck. The captain realized what was happening and knew he had to get all 120 passengers and crew off the ship. So he launched a rescue operation in which several of the steamer's wooden lifeboats were launched, but every single one of them that was launched was immediately smashed to pieces in the rough waves, killing all occupants on board. And on board one of those lifeboats was Eliza Margaret Dunn. After the whole ordeal was over with, the rest of the passengers were rescued by the steamer Louisiana, including William Edmondson Jones. Jones was very deeply saddened at the loss of his wife, especially since he had just married her. But despite this, he continued to work for the U.S. Army. But in 1857, he quit and settled in near Glade Springs, Virginia, from which he would become a farmer and grow grapes and make wine. But then later on, a couple years later, something would happen, which would not only flip his life upside down, but the entire country of the United States of America. In 1861, after years of dividing tension in the South, and now with Abraham Lincoln becoming President of the United States of America, 11 slave states, all with sympathy to slavery, officially seceded from the Union, splitting the country in two, with the southern states declaring themselves the Confederate States of America. Tensions were now strung tighter than ever, and all it would take was one wrong move on either side to spark a conflict. And that wrong move came on April 12, 1861, when the Confederates fired on Fort Sumter. When this happened, America was thrown into the depths of the American Civil War. Immediately after the start of the American Civil War, Jones went on to become a captain of the 1st Virginia Cavalry Army, serving a group known as the Washington Mounted Rifles. On May 9th, coincidentally his birthday, Jones was promoted to major in Virginia's Provisional Army. Then later that month, Virginia, being a part of the Confederacy, and Jones and his regiment, being in Virginia, were transferred over to the Confederate Army. On July 21st, Jones, serving under Commander Jeb Stuart, fought in the First Battle of Bull Run, which was a Confederate victory. Then, a month later, Jones was promoted to colonel and given command of the 1st Virginia Cavalry. In the fall of 1861, the Confederate Army went under a massive reorganization, during which men could re-elect their officers, but Jones was not re-elected to his original post of commander of the 1st Virginia Cavalry, losing to Fitzhugh Lee. Because of this, Jones was given command of the 7th Virginia Cavalry, placed in the Shenandoah Valley, briefly replacing the man originally stationed there, Angus W. McDonald. In the early months of 1862, Jones went on to lead a regiment operation along the Potomac River. In March of that same year, he was briefly given command of all cavalry in the Valley District, but was shortly recalled back to Richmond right before Stonewall Jackson's very famous Valley Campaign. After returning, he became part of Jeb Stuart's army, famously raiding around General George B. McClellan's army during the famous 7 Days battles, lasting from June 25th to July 1st of 1862. On August 2nd, Jones then served in the Battle of Orange Courthouse, and during the battle was wounded, but recovered shortly after. Later that month, Jones's cavalry earned themselves a name when they fought in the Second Bull Run campaign, which included the following battles: Battle of Cedar Mountain, Battle of Rappahannock Station, Battle of Manassas Station, Battle of Thought Fair Gap, Second Battle of Bull Run, and Battle of Chantilly. We have now reached the summer of 1863. At this time, the Confederacy was starting to collapse. Men and supplies were dwindling, and riots were breaking out in their cities. The president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, wanted to send some troops belonging to Robert E. Lee, who was the commanding general of the Confederate Army, down to the city of Vicksburg, which was currently under a Union siege led by Ulysses S. Grant. But Lee saw that the North was starting to also kind of collapse because of how long they've been fighting the war. And he thought that if he sent his troops down to Vicksburg, the war could drag on for much longer. And he made some attempts in the past to try and flank Washington, D.C., which was the capital of the United States of America. And he failed every time. But he thought this time, if he could just threaten D.C., then he could finally end the war with a Confederate victory. And so, he started making plans. And when those plans went into effect, he, along with Stuart and Jones, set out on one of their most infamous campaigns in the entire war. And this eventually led down to the infamous Battle of Gettysburg. On July 3rd, when the plans for Pickett's charge were put in place, Jones received a letter from Robert E. Lee requesting that he would move his cavalry up and station them near the town of Fairfield. However, just north of the town, Jones came across the 6th U.S. Cavalry, led by Samuel H. Starr. Starr and his cavalry were on their way to seize some Confederate wagons that were spotted in the area by the townsfolk. When both Jones's and Starr's cavalry met each other, the Battle of Fairfield ensued, which ended in a Confederate victory, with Starr being taken as a prisoner. At around the time Jones won his battle, Lee lost his when Pickett's charge ended in a disaster, with all his Confederate troops fleeing through the town of Fairfield and back into Virginia. On September 13, 1863, Jones, serving under Jeb Stuart, fought in the Battle of Culpeper Courthouse, which unfortunately for them ended in a Union victory. And this battle turned out to be Jones's last battle serving under Stuart. Now, you might be asking yourself why. Well, the reason is pretty simple. Jones and Stuart kind of hated each other. The details of this are a little muddy, but all you have to know is that Stuart was possibly jealous of Jones. So, after this battle, Jones was court-martialed by Stuart. But soon enough, Robert E. Lee found out about this and he intervened and had Jones transferred over to the Trans-Allegheny Department stationed in West Virginia. Now no longer under Stuart's thumb, Jones recruited his own cavalry along with James Longstreet and set out on campaigns in eastern Tennessee during the winter and spring of 1864. In May of 1864, Jones took command of the Confederate armies in the Shenandoah Valley when the Union started the Shenandoah Valley Campaign of 1864. On June 5th, 1864, while Jones's army was in the town of Piedmont, they came across an army led by David Hunter, and then the Battle of Piedmont ensued. Jones had around 5,500 men compared to Hunter's 8,000 men, so he was outnumbered in this battle, and it's possible he knew this. And yeah, the battle was definitely not really going in his way. So at one point during the battle, Jones gathered some Confederates and then did a large bayonet charge up towards the Union line in a desperate attempt to break it. But unfortunately, the Union line was ready for them, and they opened fire. A bullet struck Jones in the center of the head, knocking him off his saddle and down onto the ground. He was killed instantly. The Battle of Piedmont did end up being a Union victory. William Edmondson Grumble Jones was 40 years old at the time of his death. He is currently buried in Old Glade Springs Church in Glade Springs, Virginia. On April 9, 1865, after the Battle of Appomattox Courthouse, the South officially surrendered and the United States officially reunited. Jones's legacy and leadership will forever be remembered in the memory of those who he fought with, and to this day still remains a legend.